Well, on to our top story today. The Prime Minister...
I'm not talking now, I'm dying.
Rishi Sunak is said to be... Come on, we've got to do serious stuff now, Jeremy. I can't even speak now. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is said to be appalled by the way in which police treated a Jewish man during a pro-Palestinian demonstration in London.
Gideon Falter was told by an officer that his presence risked breaching the peace, and he used the phrase, "You are quite openly Jewish," when explaining his actions. Here's a reminder, my friends, of what took place. Have a listen, have a watch.
If I could ask you to stay there, please. Thank you very much. I know I have heard you.
I don't want to stay here. I want to leave.
Well, in that case, sir,
And I'm going that way.
when the crowd is gone, I will happily escort you out.
I'm going to walk. No, I don't think that. There's no place.
No, sir. I don't want anybody antagonising anything. Yeah, and at the moment, sir, you are quite openly Jewish. This is a pro-Palestinian march. I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm worried about the reaction to your presence.
Joining us is the political editor at Tortoise, Kat Needham, and Jonathan Sacherdodi, a journalist who has campaigned against anti-Semitism. Thank you both. Kat, to start with you, lots being made of this. Who should deal with this, right? Because the people who dislike Sadiq Khan, and there are many, are saying, come on, you helped pick this guy, you jump up and down all the time in London, where's your voice? He made actually a comment over the weekend which said he wasn't that impressed and there was supposed to be a meeting today. Is it the Home Secretary? Is this guy clumsy? Or is it actually proof that the Met is pretty poor in so many things? Another example.
Lots of questions there, Jeremy. So in terms of whose responsibility it is, who has the kind of final say on whether Sir Mark Rowley keeps his job or not, it is Sadiq Khan. And the backdrop to all of this, of course, is that there are local elections looming, one of which is the London mayoral election. So no doubt there is some degree of politics at play on this. There are meetings happening today with members of the Jewish community and the Home Secretary. And it's clear that I think Sir Mark Rowley is going to have to answer some uncomfortable questions about what is happening here and the level of training and understanding of the issues that some of his officers may need to get up to speed more with. But so far, although there has been criticism of this interaction, this officer, and pressure on Sir Mark Rowley to explain what has happened, there is not from the kind of people that you might expect to actually have much power or much of a say in this conversation. There is no real call for him to be forced out as yet.
I just want to bring Jonathan in. You're a journalist who campaigns against anti-Semitism. What did you make of that clip taken from last weekend, and more broadly about the issue of anti-Semitism and how it's so often misunderstood, I think, by people in authority like the police?
There's quite a lot to unpack about what's going on with those protests or hate marches, depending on what you want to call them. And I would say that this incident, while it's made a lot of headlines, is really not the main focus alone, though it's brought it to the fore. It's worth noting that since those protests against Israel have been going on for weeks and weeks, 6 months plus, let's say, since the 7th of October atrocities carried out by Palestinian terrorists on Israelis, we've seen those protests getting bolder and bolder, and I would say that they're not really simple, peaceful protests. As many Jewish people have been saying since the start, they're intimidatory and bullying exercises. And that's not just down to this cause, it's an increasing trend with protests generally. We've seen it with things like Just Stop Oil as well. The aim is not to make people aware of an issue, it's to get in their way, it's to inconvenience their lives, and at its worst, it's to terrify people and scare them. Because perhaps if you don't feel that your cause is good enough to persuade people of its validity, you choose instead to bully them and intimidate them into it. Unfortunately, the people that this is most bullying and intimidating to are Jews. And we've seen here one individual policeman say something perhaps clumsy, "You're openly Jewish." That is outrageous. The Prime Minister's right to speak out against it. There's nothing wrong with being openly Jewish. I'm openly Jewish. I'm being openly Jewish here on your programme. I hope it doesn't offend anybody. If it does, they're a racist, they're an anti-Semite. So I would say that the issue that's really at focus here is whether or not those marches are being policed properly and whether they're safe places for Jews. And the last thing I would add is that they're not safe places for Jews, at least in the estimation of the police, because they wouldn't let that man wearing a kippah, a visual indication that he's Jewish, cross the road, just as they asked people earlier on in the process to rearrange synagogue times, prayer times on Saturday mornings. It's when Jews go to synagogue and pray every single week for Shabbat, the Sabbath, like some Christians go to church on Sundays. They asked Jews who were going to synagogues in the area where these marches take place to reorganise their prayer times so that they wouldn't clash. Why would the police do that if they didn't think that it was dangerous for Jews to be coming out of synagogue, visibly Jewish, openly Jewish, to use his words, wearing a kippah maybe, if they didn't think it was dangerous for those people to come across that crowd? And if it is dangerous to come across that crowd, that means that crowd is dangerous. It's bullying, it's intimidating, it's threatening. And that alone is evidence enough that they should be doing something about those protests, policing them properly so they're not scary and dangerous for Jewish people or any people who don't simply agree with that crowd.
And Jonathan, you must understand I have to put across the side of the protest organisers as well, who will, of course, say that as well as there being concerns with certain groups of people, as we've spoken on the show, hijacking that protest for their own particular cause, that actually the people who arrange the marches are doing so because they're looking at the humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza. And
they
also
might be, but
there are
can I just
hundreds
say,
of Jewish people who will also be joining the march.
Find me the hundreds of Jewish people. I keep hearing that. I haven't met many of them. There may be some Jewish people in there. That's irrelevant. Let me tell you, the person I know who's gone to those marches regularly and tells me all about them, who is most terrified, he goes to them, is a friend of mine who's an Egyptian Arab. And why is he scared of them? Because he speaks Arabic. He's sent me photos, recordings, videos of Palestinian war songs that are being blared out on speakers, of chants of Khaybar Ya Yahud, which is an Arabic chant which is talking about killing Jews in the Battle of Khaybar, the historic Islamic battle in which they killed Jews. These are the sorts of things that are being done at those protests. I don't care if there's a number of people there who aren't doing them or who don't mean them, and even if they organise them. If there's enough of those people there that the police think that it was worth getting Jews to reorganise their regular prayer meetings on a Saturday morning or to stop a man crossing a road wearing a kippah, that means that the police's evaluation is that it's dangerous for Jewish people, and that means that it's unacceptable. The police should be stopping the people posing the danger, not the people at threat.
Jonathan, stay there one step, my friend. Great to have you on. How do you respond to what Jonathan says? Because he makes a lot of sense, to be fair.
Yeah, he does. And actually, if you listen to some of the interviews that Gideon Falter has done since this incident, he talks about the fact that it seems as though the police has made a decision to effectively side with the protesters in order to try and keep the peace, which means that Jewish people are effectively kind of requested or, you know, implicitly or explicitly not to go into...
And I guess the point of it is, if we can bring back Jonathan and both of you, actually, the point of that is, and I picked up entirely what you said, Jonathan, about changing your synagogue times. Can you imagine the uproar if that was done to other religions? But to me, that's not the point. The police, we're talking about the police here, right? The police are fundamentally saying, we'll do this or we'll do that because we can't deal with this. This conversation started with, should the boss of the Met Police be more on it, be more balanced? Absolutely he should be.
And you know who else they've arrested?
Should be.
You know who else they've arrested? I've interviewed a guy twice now on my YouTube channel. He's called Nihat Gorbani. He is an Iranian guy living in the UK who's against the Islamic Republic, which took over Iran in the Islamic Revolution. He goes to those protests because he knows the dangers of Islamism, he knows the dangers of extremist Islam, and he is in favour of Israel's actions. That's his right, by the way. We can disagree with him. He's been arrested 3 or 4 times by the police at protests simply for holding up a sign that says Hamas is a terrorist organisation.
Yep, seen it.
That's what he does.
Is this not the individual who was also arrested for assault?
Who was arrested for assault?
Was this... I'm not sure. I know that there was somebody who was carrying a Hamas or terrorist sign, but I believe they were arrested actually initially for assault. I don't know if it's the same case.
To my knowledge, I've interviewed the man twice at length. He's never been arrested for assault. In fact, 5 police wrestled him to the ground after he'd been assaulted by people in that anti-Israel crowd, and there's video evidence of it. It's in the YouTube that I did with an interview with him.
Sorry, go on.
So they're arresting the wrong people. They're arresting the people that they think the crowd is going to attack in order to keep the peace. Now, that is upside-down policing. The police are there to protect law-abiding citizens who aren't doing anything wrong. There's nothing less wrong than saying something which is British law. Hamas is a terrorist organisation under British law. That man keeps getting arrested.
Yeah, we'll try and get a line from the police to understand why quite that happened. Jonathan, what would you say? What would your appeal be to people? I'm sure there'll be lots of people out there who do join marches like this with, I think we would all agree, good intentions because of humanitarian crises, etc. People who might be anti what the Israeli army
how do we deal with the
doing.
extremists is what the police need to sort, don't they?
Yes, exactly. That's an appeal to the police. But I mean to people who are joining marches like this and obviously might not necessarily think about the way in which it might impact other people. Like yourself.
Well, I'm not here to give advice to any protesters. I'll tell you what, there are plenty of people I know protesting on either side of this debate and plenty others. And it's completely possible to have a protest where you express yourself freely and legally without threatening and intimidating other people.
Yeah,
you can make yourself heard, you can make your opinion heard, you can try and persuade other people. But bullying, intimidation, threatening, chanting death chants to Jews just in a different language so the police can't understand it, all are completely unacceptable. And the police and the government need to stop the talk. They need to stop saying how important it is to prevent violence. They need to actually act. If this is going to get messy, if someone's got to get beaten up, I'm sorry if this is unpopular to say, it should be the police. The police need to step inside in the path of danger. The police need to protect everyone from danger.
Which is exactly how we started this. There are many different sides to this argument. Just to finish, Jonathan, stay there, Kat. There are many different sides. This is not about which side. This is about the police showing either bad judgment or clumsy judgment or a lack of control, and people can see this thing spiralling. And Peter Bletchley said it 2 hours ago. Our police don't seem to be either equipped, willing, aware or whatever to deal with this problem, and it ain't going away. That's why we asked this question this morning.
I mean, I think that there are a couple of things here. One is that throughout this period, my mind has gone back to the policing of the Sarah Everard vigil, which I think a lot of women in London will be very cognizant of how heavy-handed that was and the images that came out of that. And it may well be that there is a degree to which they are trying to sort of respond to that and not go in as heavy-handedly as they did then. The other thing to say is, and where I would slightly disagree with Jonathan, is that there are hundreds of thousands of people that have been on these protests over the last few months, and the vast majority of them have been peaceful, and it is a cornerstone of British democracy that people do have this right to protest. The police have received praise from people within the community. That the CST, which is the charity that monitors anti-Semitism, even this weekend, has said in the main the police have been monitoring the situation well, have been dealing with it well. It is obviously a very difficult situation that needs to be dealt with so as to avoid escalation and inflaming the situation, which is clearly what this police officer was trying to do. However, he did it in a way that was clearly clumsy at best.
All right, guys, thank you so much indeed. Kat Neeler from Tordos and journalist Jonathan Sashadodi, thank you very much indeed.